So a little background about the organization, Project for Public Spaces. We are a nonprofit organization, and our core mission is really to help people strengthen their community through public space. And the way we do that is sort of, really rethinking the public realm and how we identify these spaces. Public spaces include everything from squares to parks to streets, sidewalks, alleys, transit corridors, transit hubs, public buildings. Often the ground floors of certain buildings are seen as a public space. Waterfronts, markets, trails, parking lots, community gardens, campuses, and often privately owned public spaces as well have sort of really transformed how we engage with our built environment and how communities can shape their built environment. And we've sort of taken this approach to placemaking all over the world. We've worked in over 3,000 communities since 1975, whether it's through trainings, projects, engagements, helping to build capacity and move this placemaking movement forward. And it all sort of goes back to the work of William Holly White, who back in the 60s and 70s was doing quite a bit of research and in-person observation of New York City's public spaces, and the way people engaged, the way people behaved in spaces. And he really found that in order to kind of create these spaces that are sociable, where people want to be, there are a few basics that are core principles to any great space. And those basics include having food, having places to sit, an element of water, having the option of sun and shade, sorry, missing the E there, a sense of scale, having places that are human scale, that are relatable. Triangulation, having many things to do, clustering activities so that they complement each other. Having places where people can watch each other. People love to do that. And so one of the key essential ingredients, I think, I've learned from all of the work that I've been doing is programming, sort of fueling these spaces with activities that resonate with the people of that community, reflect its culture, reflect its identity, history. And so the way we define placemaking, you'll find that everyone you ask, even within my organization, has a different definition of placemaking. But one that sort of I think we can all collectively agree on is that it is a collaborative visioning process, and it results in public spaces that serve the communities through programming, design, and stewardship. So it's really about lasting change and creating impact that is fueled by the people. And the process that we've committed to is sort of starts with identifying key stakeholders and working with those stakeholders right from the beginning to evaluate places and identify issues and challenges, and then working together to develop a place vision that can then start to help develop these short-term experiments, test out ideas that then informs long-term improvement. And you all have sort of started to do, a few experiments with amenities, and that kind of helps to gear up for the long term and really evaluate what's working, what's not. But we're right at the beginning. We're working with stakeholders to start to capture what ideas are coming from that community. And so when it comes to community engagement, we're big advocates of everything from public workshops that are very inclusive and invite a range of stakeholders, but also really understanding how to tap into stakeholders that may not be as engaged or are not you know, likely to attend a workshop? How do we make sure that we're tapping into all of the interests and talent in the community, showing up at other destinations, public spaces, community gathering spaces where we can hear from a range of stakeholders, and that includes children, and that includes maybe testing out some ideas, and using a community event as an opportunity to hear from the community. And it's this idea that without meaning, a place is just a space. So space sort of, you know, without meaning as a fact of life produces basic coordinates of human life. And there's this quote by Yifan Tuan, that when humans invest meaning in a portion of a space, it then becomes a place when they've sort of attached meaning to it. And that's kind of the goal here, is that through this process, we're identifying opportunities for people to attach meaning to their public realm. And I guess I just wanted to add, you know, through this pandemic, we've seen how public spaces have really come to the rescue for people, and how they've accommodated, you know, social distancing, but still allowed for people to experience the outdoors. That was an example of Domino Park in Brooklyn, where circles had just been painted on the lawn so that, you know, individuals can kind of be in their own safe space, but still enjoy the outdoors. And a big idea that we've been really advocating for is this idea of power of 10. And it's simply put is that every city or region should have 10 or more destinations that sort of all connect to each other. And in each of these destinations, there should be 10 places. And in each of these places, there should be 10 things to do. And that's sort of at the human scale, you know, sitting, being able to read a newspaper, shopping, being able to purchase a beverage, being able to purchase some snacks. And all of those different activities, when they are layered together, create this synergy, create this dynamic sort of active environment. And what we're seeing is, you know, we see a lot of high design. This is an example of a park that clearly was designed with a lot of thought, but lacked the sociability lens. We can tell that there was, you know, high design thought put into the way the black pebbles are lined up next to the white pebbles, and the way the trees are located, the benches. But when a family of 4 comes to enjoy the park, they have to split up. They have 2 children, they have to split up. And it's almost as if this park was designed, you know, with COVID in mind, to keep people separate. And what we're really trying to achieve is this idea of really dynamic social spaces that often don't cost a lot of money, but can be created in ways just with temporary uses, and you know, that environment that allows for people to engage with each other. And when we do this, with that in mind, there are multiple benefits, and I will just run through those very quickly. You know, they improve accessibility when designed with the community in mind. They're intended to build and support the local economy through, you know, entrepreneurship and vending opportunities. They build and promote this sense of comfort, and that can be done through amenities, that can be done through the experience that's created in that space. They can nurture and define a sense of community, and that, you know, kind of goes back to that sense of sociability and promoting social interaction, creating ways that strangers can sort of be in the same space and engage with each other. And then promoting health, whether that's through, you know, creating opportunities for walking and physical fitness, or whether it's through, you know, being able to purchase healthy produce, healthy products, And so back to the process, you all are still kind of early on in this process. You have an amazing group, you are an amazing group of stakeholders, and I think right at this point, it's an excellent time to start thinking more about the public realm and the opportunities that are out there, and start thinking about how some of your ideas can be experimented with right away, and how they could evolve into more longer term, more intense activation. And so anything from one-day events to reoccurring events, programming that can happen regularly. It kind of gives people something to look forward to, whether it's a food truck that appears every Friday, they know that that's where it's going to be. And then moving towards more of the lighter amenities, thinking about art, installations, equipment, and then even development, whether it's, storage, buildings, temporary structures that then also could inform the need for permanent infrastructure. So today, what we're going to really dive into is the qualities of great public spaces. And over the course of the past 4 decades, this organization has done a lot of observing and research about what makes places work, what makes them great. And about 25 years ago, this diagram was created to kind of help reframe the way which anyone can look at their public realm and evaluate it. And so the inner circle sort of highlights these 4 key ingredients, these 4 great qualities of great places. And I'm going to go into those a little bit more in just a minute, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about that second circle, the second ring, which talks about the intangibles, the qualitative elements of a space that you can sort of intuitively feel as you arrive, whether it's fun, whether it's special, is it attractive? Is it convenient to get to? Does it feel like it's connected to other spaces? Do you see a sense of stewardship, diversity? Is it welcoming? Those are all things that you can sort of, feel as you arrive. And then that outer ring focuses on the quantitative and more measurable elements of a space that help support those intuitive qualities. And so things from, retail sales, the number of pedestrians that are actually in the space, the number of volunteers, the number of women, often the number of women and children and elderly help to kind of really tell you a lot about whether this space is welcoming to a wider audience and reflective of a larger community. So we'll focus on the four ingredients today, and I think we'll get into discussions a little bit later about 2 of them. But as we're talking about access and linkages, things to really think about, aside from just being able to walk to a place, does it feel special when you arrive? And this is an example of an intersection that's been painted to kind of mark this this very important place in, I believe it's Portland. The way in which you arrive at a place, if it's marked with some kind of visual element, is there a gateway feature that lets you know that you've arrived? Do spaces have a name? Do people know that they are in a special place? Thinking about how elements such as transit stops and bus stops can be rethought to be more artistic and reflective of the interests and the talents of the community. Signage, do people know how long it takes to get to the next destination, the next attraction, or to different places within the community? Are there places for people to tie up their bikes? And is there a place where are there bike lanes? Even just getting to different destinations, how different modes can be accommodated. And then simple things as crosswalks. Can people cross the street safely? And can you allow for different modes of transit? If people want to bike or use their scooters, is there an accommodation for that? And then also when we're talking about accessibility and linkages, how the indoor environment connects with the outdoor environment. Are buildings transparent at the ground level? And is there sort of this seamless indoor-outdoor transition? What are those uses? Does it spill out? So you see all these chairs that have sort of create this outdoor environment adjacent to this building that really create this welcoming entrance to the building. And when you're thinking about uses and activities, going back to those placemaking basics, are there options for food? Do people have choices in the kinds of food, beverages, whether it's vending carts, pop-up kiosks, things that can be semi-permanent. So this is a semi-permanent restaurant with ample seating. And again, providing a choice for different kinds of events. And these are beer garden examples where different times of the day they could be used for different types of events. Thinking more seasonally, what happens in the winter? Are there uses that can attract different audiences? Holiday market with lots of different adjacent uses. There's a beer garden with seating. I think there's some fire pits as well. How music and the arts can play a role in activating spaces, and just thinking about throughout a 24-hour period, how different uses can attract different audiences. Whether it's a lunchtime series or an afternoon yoga class or an evening dance lesson. And then thinking about how to make these spaces fun for everybody, bringing the indoors, outdoors, and color. How art can be interactive and not just sort of a visual marker, but also really engaging and meaningful. Outdoor exhibits can also sort of liven up a space. And we often think about play as kid-friendly environments and activities that appeal to the younger demographics, but there are lots of examples of where play is for all ages and can be kind of challenging and exciting and adventurous as well. And again, opportunities where different age groups and intergenerational learning and arts can exist. Markets are a great way for entrepreneurs and local artisans to showcase their talents and for to help the local economy. So there's a range of different kinds of uses and activities that have really helped activate spaces all around the world. And I think just really leaning into the skills that exist within Bellevue and being able to bring them outdoors, giving people a reason to enjoy the spaces, you know, even thinking about outdoor offices, shade opportunities, fitness opportunities for all ages, and once again, how the ground floors can spill out to the outdoors and create a vibrant edge and pedestrian environment. And then thinking about comfort and image, how does this place make an impression? You know, the first time you arrive, is there something iconic that you'll remember? The lighting, you know, what's happening after 5 p.m. when it's dark? Are there a range of seating options? Is there enough seating? And where is it located? You know, are there places to sit in the sun? Are there places to sit in the shade? You know, places clean. Thinking about different shade opportunities and getting creative with that. And water as an element, and making sure that when there is water, is there an opportunity to touch the water and be in it? How green landscaping can interact with the urban environment. You know, are there places for people to take off their shoes and sort of relax and enjoy people watching? Fun seating, relaxing seating. These hammocks are great in Governor's Island in New York. It's just a range of various seating that can provide different levels of comfort. And then thinking about, when you're thinking about identity image, is there something iconic that everybody flocks to for that photo op? These are the ducklings at Boston Gardens. They're always, you know, always the attraction for kids to take photos with. Comfort in terms of, you know, shade, but also seating, and bean bags have been really popular for providing an extra fun element. Lighting and art. These are, this is an art installation at Discovery Green in Houston, and it rotates every season, I believe. So there's always something that brings people back. Murals, thinking about any blank facades that can be activated. These are charging stations that are also art installations and sculptural. Something that really iconic. And to me, I think sociability is sort of almost the most important ingredient, because it's all about, you know, bringing people together and reflecting culture, reflecting the identity of that community, and, you know, providing opportunities for intergenerational activities, learning opportunities, you know, places where you can run into your neighbors, your friends, where strangers can engage in a game of ping pong. This is an example of, at Bryant Park, there was a documentary made about how just people from all walks of life have made some of their, you know, the greatest friendships over a game of ping pong and become regulars.
Pardon the interruption, Priti. We've got about 5 more minutes dedicated to this section, so just wanted to be conscious of that.
Yeah, I think we're good with time. And yeah, just opportunities where people from different walks of life can engage with each other. This is a double-sided piano where people can play together, play some music together. Thinking about networking events, bringing events outdoors, classrooms, conferences, forums, meetings, thinking about places where dogs can hang out while you enjoy a beverage. There is some good examples of restaurant food establishments that have incorporated dog parks on their grounds, so that there are places where we can be sociable with our furry friends. And I guess I'll just end with this quote by Jane Jacobs. There is no logic that can be superimposed on the city. People make it, and it is to them, not buildings, that we must fit our plans. That's ultimately what it comes down to, really understanding what people desire, what people want to be able to do in their public spaces, and how best to kind of tap into the passions, the talents, the interests, and have them reflected. So I think we're doing extra good with time, and we'll just have an extra minute or two for questions before we jump into our discussions.
Any questions about these 4 key attributes of placemaking that we're going to dive into, the images, or maybe like how do we assess the urban environment in one of these categories?
I have a question. This is Beth from Symetra. Thank you so much for the presentation. One of the items that sort of came up last time with this group in the discussions was around sort of the grittiness, which I was thinking about that a bit, and I was thinking about how it might actually be sort of authenticity. And I'm kind of wondering how some of the communities, especially as it comes to sociability and welcoming and diversity and kind of getting at all those intergenerational aspects, how do they highlight their history and their authenticity?
Yeah, it's a great question. I will say art is a big driver for many of these activities. And so really being able to tap into the artist community and the storytelling capabilities is an amazing way to kind of help do that, whether it's through really creative exhibits, whether it's through storytelling sessions, whether it's through recordings and music, performances. Those have been really interesting and creative ways that kind of go in a different direction from the traditional, plaques and signage. But it sort of all complements, the everyday programming with sometimes these one-off events as well that kind of capture a bigger story.
Matt, you're on mute.
Thank you, Chris. We've all done that before, right? We have time for one more question, if folks are so inclined. All right, I'll take that silence as we're good to go.
Ben has a question. Ben has a question.
Oh, Ben, pardon. Please go right ahead.
That was a great presentation, really interesting. From time to time, I look out of my window, and it's January in Washington State. A lot of the majority of the images that you showed, it's sunny, it's Spain, it's France, it's the summertime. One of the things that kind of interests me, and I spent a lot of time, when I first moved to the States, I lived for 12 years in Minneapolis, and again participated in these kind of workshops. And a lot of the discussion there is what happens in the winter. A place like Minneapolis, that's a key question, because it's below zero. So how do you have a public life on the street when it is below zero. And they looked at places like Finland, where that has been achieved through considerable public investment. So I think one of the things kind of interests me is, from September to March here in Washington, it's cold, it's wet, rains a lot. You talk about shade. Is there also a need for protection from rain?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's going to be a big part of your discussions moving forward, is sort of really thinking about all the seasons. And think about, right now in New York, because of the pandemic, having all of our restaurant seating moved outside during the winter has kind of been a showcase for how this can be done. These sort of individual seating hubs and pods that provide shelter from the weather conditions, but kind of also a really creative way for people to still enjoy the outdoor seating environment, and get really creative with, whether they're transparent or, see-through and the materials that are used. So shade and shelter, I think, are going to be definitely one of your key amenities to extending life onto the sidewalks in the public realm throughout the seasons. And also, when you're thinking about just sort of now adhering to safety regulations as well, it kind of becomes something to think about more in the near future.
I mean, just one more point. I mean, I think one of the joys of living in this part of the world are the seasons. So, compared to, southern Spain or California or wherever, the beauty of this place is that it is always different from month to month. And outdoor life should reflect that and should celebrate that, in my opinion. Yeah, absolutely. And I will just say that lighting during the winter months is something that can really be tapped into, because it sort of creates a sense of activity without sometimes actual programming happening, and just color. And I think there's a laundry list of examples of how this has been done really effectively, and extending things into like having blankets outdoors for seating, or heating lamps, fire pits, that sort of stuff. Curling, I know, is big in some states, or definitely in Canada, and that has come up in a couple of our projects when we're thinking about winter activation. But just thinking about different kind of fun activities. Detroit did some really cool winter activation at a few of their public spaces. So aside from the holiday market example that I showed, thinking about just large tent spaces that can host activities as well.
That's a great point, Ben, and something that wasn't reflected in the first workshop series is considering the factor of weather, time, daylight. Failing forward, we worked with the city years ago to put together an event where we would project light onto the buildings and sort of animate it. That was like this idea that we were really pushing. But think about like when it's dark enough to animate the buildings with light, and the conditions you want to do that. That's in the summertime when the weather's nice, but the sun sets around 9:30, 10 o'clock. Who's going to be there to enjoy it? So there's all these different factors in play that are unique to our world that need to be considered. So add that to the list of things when you're viewing and discussing placemaking in the urban environment. So great question, Prita. Thank you for the presentation, I think.